Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm grateful for the opportunity to take part in this debate, and as it's my first opportunity to do so in the Chamber, I'd like to congratulate and welcome Kate Forbes and Ben McPherson to their new positions. I think, first of all, we have a responsibility in this Parliament, as much as we come from different political traditions, and nowhere is that often more obvious than when we discuss tax. We do have an obligation to be careful in the language that we use. I would like to perhaps just initially look at some of the rhetoric from the Conservative Party. One of the terms used is a middle-income earner. We sometimes see that in the front page of tabloid newspapers, and that a middle-income earner is someone perhaps on £40,000 or £50,000, and that this government has some sort of oppressive Dennis Healy-style set of policies which is going to precipitate a brain drain and leave Scotland crippled. That's the narrative, but it's nonsense. We all know it's nonsense. And we stand up and we engage in this pantomime, but we know it's not true. So let's just maybe try and establish some facts here. The median income in Scotland is £25,000, £25,200. In fact, 75% of taxpayers in Scotland earn less than £37,000. Now, someone earning £40,000 in Scotland is paying about £2.45 a week more in tax than they are in the rest of the UK. Think of a school teacher earning perhaps, I don't know, £42,000, for example. That's how much more they're paying a week. But unlike a school teacher in England, we're not sitting with £28,000 almost of tuition fee debt. So I think it's really important we get beyond this silly rhetoric. Yeah, we can have a debate about taxation and its value and how it interacts with economic growth and what our objectives are, though that is somewhat difficult given the limited powers that we have. But let's just be reasonable. And I'd say to Rhoda Grant as well, I appreciate there was a bit of nostalgia in her speech when Labour was in government and telling us how wonderful things were under Labour, though failing obviously to admit the Labour policies that led towards the 2008 global crash and the light touch regulation in the City of London, which precipitated a decade of austerity. Something started initially. Oh yes, certainly.
Rhoda Grant.
I can't help but be slightly amused that the member blames a Labour government for a global crash. Were we so powerful? Maybe that's why poverty was falling.
Tom Arthur.
Well, I would just draw to a former party leader, Joanne Lamont, who described London as a city-state and a global financial centre, which was at the centre, in many respects, of the global crash under a Labour government light touch regulation. I'm not blaming Labour in isolation. That would be silly to do that. I'm just saying that they had a part, and of course it was Alistair Darling who said there would have to be austerity tougher and deeper than Margaret Thatcher. And that is the reality. This government was barely in power for 1 year when we had to, when the financial crash happened, and that has been the reality we've had to experience and deal with. But I think Rhoda Grant's comments about this being a right-wing government, it's ridiculous. I appreciate perhaps that the SNP might not be as left-wing as the Labour Party would like, particularly those acolytes of Jeremy Corbyn. But to go and suggest that it's a right-wing government, it's ridiculous. We need to up our game here and improve our rhetoric. This is a parliament of minorities. And there's been 5 years in the history of devolution when one party has had a majority. Other than that, it has been for Parliament to set budgets, it has been for Parliament to work together, and we have to raise our game. We have a responsibility to 5.4 million people, oversight of a budget in excess of £40 billion, and yet we're engaging in this daft, puerile rhetoric and deliberately misleading people with terms such as middle-end, what a middle earner is, or indeed what government is right-wing and what government is left-wing. So I think we have to go and take a slightly more mature approach. And I think there has to be a recognition that, and I'll make this my final point, Presiding Officer, because I realise time is against me. And the points raised, I think, by Donald Cameron and Murdo Fraser with regards to the income tax take in the fiscal framework. The fiscal framework is what we've got to deal with, but it is not sustainable in the long term. It is a perverse situation when we can raise £650 million in additional revenue via income tax, but only see £46 million of it available for public spending. But the reason for that is not due to a decline in Scottish economic performance relative to the rest of the UK as a result of that policy. It's because we can't grow our working age population, which underscores the need to grow our working population through migration. And I think it's excellent that the Minister for Public Finance is also the Minister for Migration, because that is going to be critical. Anyway, time is against me, Presiding Officer. Thank you.